So when I travel from Europe to America, one thing that is always very noticeable for me, very easily noticeable, is the enormous variety of people living in America. It's like people from all sorts of places. I can see that already in the when I arrive, and that's always been something I observed. I've been in America 4 times now. This is my 4th time. It's always been something I've noticed. But whatever people we live with, whether they are very from a very different background than us or very similar background, there's always something that we have all in common, and that has to do with the basic integrity and the basic character that we have as a human being. And more than 2,000 years ago, the Buddha, he talked about the importance of taking care of the people around us in a very famous teaching. And it has different names, but I call it the Buddha's Guide to Our Social Relations. It's maybe a bit boring title, I don't know. So this is the original title. It's a bit difficult to pronounce. It's sometimes also called the Sikalaka Sutta. Sutta, for those of you who don't know, Sutta, it means text, Buddhist text. It's also called the Sinkalowata Sutta. It is the 31st discourse of the Buddha, and it's part of the long discourses. So this is one collection of discourses of the Buddha. And it's been called by the American monk and translator Bhikkhu Bodhi, he called it the most comprehensive of the early Buddhist texts, dealing with happiness in the here and now. So it's a very important text. Okay, this just to give you a little bit of background, okay? This may get a little bit theoretical in the beginning, but after that we come to talk a little bit more about the practice. So just to give you a little bit of background, when I talk about the Buddhist text, what do I mean? This is what we call the Tipitaka. The Tipitaka, it sounds like a bird living somewhere in South America or something, but it's actually the name of the Buddhist text, sometimes also called the Tripitaka. It's the same thing. They are sometimes also referred to as the early Buddhist texts. So the Tipitaka, it actually literally means the 3 baskets, or simply the 3 collections. So there are in total 3 collections of texts in the Buddhist tradition, and these exist in every Buddhist tradition, but they exist in different languages. So there is Sanskrit, Pali. Pali is the word that the language that we use in Thailand for Buddhism. But there's all sorts of versions. There is a Chinese version, Tibetan version. There is also an ancient Turkish version. Yes, that exists as well. These traditions, but the texts are very similar. They're just different languages. They consist of 3 collections. So the first collection is discipline. Discipline means the rules that the Buddha issued to the monks and the nuns at that time. And then there's the discourses. This is the most popular to read, for people to read. It's the Suttanta. I'm sorry about the letters being a little bit small every now and then, but you can find the handouts at the back if you want to follow along. And many of these texts you can find you can actually read online, but it's sometimes kind of difficult to read. If you ever got a very diligent school teacher that taught you about Aristotle and Plato and so on, it's about the same style as Plato. It is a bit. There are conversations, but they sometimes feel like they're using a language. It feels like they're using a language that we're not used to. So even though it's translated, you still feel like, what's going on here? So it takes a bit of time to get really used to the meaning of every word and so on. Then there is also a sort of encyclopedia. They call it the Abhidhamma. And this is the third collection. So there's in total 3 collections. And this is what we talk about today is from the Suttanta, it's the discourses. Now, before I continue, I would like to say a few things about how the Buddha taught his teaching. So when I continue, just like to point out that the word Dhamma, this means, in this context, it means the teaching of the Buddha. Okay? Sometimes the Buddha would refer to his teaching as Dhamma, or Dharma, maybe you've heard of that, Dharma with an R. And also he referred to it as Dhamma Vinaya, which means the teaching and the practice. So the Buddha said himself that he only taught the teaching in 3 ways. He would only taught those things that he experienced himself through direct knowledge. So he wouldn't teach anything that he didn't have any knowledge of. That kind of makes sense, right? But it has a deeper meaning that it was also not just something he experienced intellectually, but it was things that he really felt inside through his practice of meditation, he had seen for himself. But even though that was the case, the Buddha would always give reasons for things. So this is, I think, very important aspect of the Buddhist teaching, that everything must have reasons. And if there is any Buddhist teaching that doesn't seem to have any reason to it, then we are often encouraged to find that reason, to understand it, and to try to understand the reasons for things. So to question it, in other words, is a good thing. To question it, not to be just skeptical for the purpose of being skeptical, no. But we are questioning it to understand it, to really learn about it. So this is very typical of the Buddhist teaching. But the third thing that he talked about his Buddhist teaching is that his teachings are therapeutic. Of course, that is a word that we use in the present day. It's not an ancient word. The Buddha himself, he called his teaching an antidote. If you ever been in Thailand and you go to one of those far, like those places which are a little bit off the road, off the trodden road, sometimes you can find all these snakes there. And you have to be a bit careful where you walk. At night, you need to have a flashlight just to check whether there are any snakes. They can be very small, but still very poisonous. So antidotes can be very important in Thailand. But the Buddha, he talked about his teaching as an antidote. He said his teachings are therapeutic. They actually work. They have a power to them, and you can practice it, and you find, okay, it works. It helps me. Okay, all of these things you can learn about for yourself. Okay, I just tell you about these things, but you'll have to figure out whether these things are really true. But it's important to note that the Buddha did give reasons for all his teachings, and therefore, if anything is unclear to you, you shouldn't feel that you can't ask anything. You should feel free to ask. We have some time at the end, and we have the question and answer. Whenever we listen to these Buddhist teachings, there are 5 things we can gain from it, according to the Buddhist tradition. There's a lot of lists in many of my talks. I'm sorry about that. This is a bit typical of Buddhist teachings. There are many lists. There was one American teacher of religion, American scholar of religion. He said the Hindus have their gods and the Buddhists have their lists. I think it's true. But just bear with me and I will continue to explain. But this is just an organization of the knowledge of Buddhism. Okay, so it may be a bit many lists, but that's just how it's organized. So every time we listen to these Buddhist teachings, we hear what we haven't heard yet. That makes sense, right? But sometimes we also hear things that we've heard before, but it helps you to clarify, and you helps you sometimes when you have some doubts or some perplexity about things. It helps you to gain clarity of mind. The Buddha, he called it straightening out your views. Straightening out your views means that you start to see things more clearly. Views, or titi in Buddhism, it means the perspective on life and the world where you are living in. It helps you, in other words, many of these teachings, they help you to develop a certain perspective on life that is very powerful and it's like the opposite of cynicism. It gives you the strength and energy to do good and the caution to avoid all those things that are wrong. But the Buddha said that even if you listen to something that you've heard many times already, it still is something good to listen to because your mind becomes placid. The mind becomes kind and soft because of these teachings. Okay, when I am going to talk about the teachings, Buddhism today, I would like you to think of this little young girl. And you can ask yourself the question, when she's going to stand up from her chair, will all of those things that are on her lap, will they just fall on the floor? Right? I think they will. That's kind of the nature of a young girl. It's very, very busy, doing a lot of things. How many of you have, has anybody here have any young children? Okay, quite a few. I'm very busy, doing a lot of things at the same time. So the Buddha said, if we listen to the Dhamma, or if we read a book, that can happen too. When we read a book about Buddhism, there's 3 ways to do that. Another list. First of all, we can read it with inverted wisdom. That means that we are not open to it. Like anything you know already, you say, okay, I know that already. Anything you don't know yet, you say, nah. This is like what the Buddha called a person of inverted wisdom. He tried to be polite, so he's not saying that some person is stupid or something. No, he's saying inverted wisdom. Some people may have some wisdom, but they're not open to learn anything more. Then the Buddha said, some people, they're kind of open to some Buddhist teaching, some Buddhist wisdom, but they have lap-like wisdom. That means, like this young girl, as soon as they stand up, they just leave it there. It just falls off their lap. Now, I'm not pointing any fingers here because sometimes some of these teachings can be very difficult to understand. Sometimes you're like, okay, really? Before I became a monk, there was a lot of things in Buddhism that I struggled with, like, is that true? Or how should I approach that? Or I had questions. I couldn't always find an answer straight away. But we try to find those things that we can use, extract those things that are useful in our lives, and we continue to practice those. This is what the Buddha called somebody with wise wisdom. In Thai language, they translate it as somebody with straight wisdom, like turned straight. And that is the third kind of wisdom. So these are 3 approaches to learn about the Buddhist teaching. This is all just introduction. Now we're starting. So one thing to note that when we talk about the Singalowata Sutta or the Sikalaka Sutta, the teaching that we talk about, that I want to talk about in these 4 evenings that I'm here. So one thing that I would like you to know is that the Buddha, he was a reformer, not a destroyer. So when we talk about the Singalowata Sutta, I will have to explain what happened. What was the context for this teaching? Because every teaching of the Buddha has a context to it, why it happened. So there was this young man, and he was, one day he was standing, and he was bowing in every direction. Like bowing one time to the front, one time to the back, one time bowing to the left, one time bowing to the right, then bowing up. Anybody practice the sun salutation when you are doing yoga? Surya Namaskara, you know this, right? Bowing up, bowing down. So he went through every direction. And then the Buddha asked him, why do you do that? The Buddha, he came along. It sounds like the beginning of a stupid joke, but it's actually something that happened. The Buddha came and he asked him, why do you do that? And then he said, I do this because it was the last thing my father asked me to do before he died. Oh, suddenly the joke becomes very serious. So his father, he did this practice every day, and he wanted his son to continue. Now this young man, he has very little knowledge of any religion, any wisdom, but he has this sense, I want to respect my father's wish, because you should respect a dying man's wish, right? So he does this practice every day, but he has no clue what he's doing. Now I've looked it up, and it actually is, this practice is actually meant to greet the important deities of which existed in those days, which were honored the most, the important Hindu deities. And he would greet each and every one of those. Like I said, the Hindus have their gods and the Buddhists have their lists. And when he did that, he didn't really know about that background much. He just simply did it just in case, because his father asked him to. When I went to Nepal once, I actually saw this happening in real time. There was an older man, and he suddenly walked on the street, and all the cars, they stopped. Now, I was in Kathmandu, so there's a lot of traffic anyway, so it's not really a big thing that somebody walks on the street and then all the cars stop. It's very normal. But it was quite extraordinary what he was doing. He was actually facing every direction and bowing to every direction in the middle of the square. So in this case, this young man, he wanted to respect his father, but he didn't know why he was doing that. And the Buddha asked him and he couldn't answer. The Buddha said, well, this is a good practice, but let me explain how to do it in the right way. That is very meaningful and powerful. So this is very typical for the Buddha. He saw what people practiced and he didn't refuse it, but he reformed it. He gave it a new meaning. He gave it a new ethical life to a ritual which had become a little bit meaningless. And this is very typical for the Buddha. Like an old religious idea, it already existed, and then he reinterpreted and redefined it. So what did he say? He said, this is like the core of this discourse. This is a bit small, but I will read it to you. He said there are 6 directions in our life. 6 directions that every human being, nearly every human being has. These 6 directions in some way, shape or form. First of all, the direction in front of you, your parents. Then there is every other direction, whether left, right, back, every direction has a group of people. Whether they are your teachers like mundane subjects, like everyday subjects, when you go to school and so on, when you still contact these people. Taking care of your family, taking care of your friends, taking care of your employees, if you have employees, could be. Taking care of your spiritual teachers. All of these are part of this text. And the Buddha basically says, when you take care of every direction, your life will be good. And every direction will take care of you. It's very basic, but it's very powerful. But before he talks about that, he also lays down a bit of foundation of Buddhist ethics. And he talks about mindfulness and clarity and being aware of your motivations and biases. All of this he covers in this text. He also talks about friendship being at the foundation of all of these relations. I think this is very, very beautiful, because we often think that people in ancient times, for example, marriage was just an agreement between people, like an economical agreement or something like that. But the Buddha actually talks about these things like all of these relations, they must be have a foundation of friendship. So this is very fundamental to this text. And then when we go through this evening and the other 3 evenings, I will talk about these aspects. It's a lot to cover, but we'll see how far we can come. But we'll have to summarize a few points. So let's now look at the first aspect of this text, which is the foundation of Buddhist ethics. Now there's 2 kinds of rules in Buddhism. There's 2 kinds of things in Buddhism that are talked about. First of all, there is, when it comes to ethics, right? What is right and what is wrong. There is what we call ethical living or an ethical life. We call it sila, which means that you think it's important not to hurt others through your words, through your actions, and you're careful about that. This is what we call ethical living or sila. Then there is clinging to rules and vows. This is sila paramasa, but the word is too long, so I didn't put in the Indian word. And it's just clinging to rules and vows. So this is just for tradition's sake. You don't really have a reason for this. You just do it like that. So this is a difference. So when we talk about the kind of rules or principles in Buddhism, we talk about things that are really about how to live your life in a beautiful way, in a way that you don't hurt others. And you also live for the welfare, the happiness of yourself and others. This is what we call sila. Now there's 5 principles of sila which are at the basic ethics of Buddhism. It's not always the most popular aspect of Buddhism, the sila. And people like to know about meditation and mindfulness in Buddhism. But when you talk about the sila, it's not that interesting. It's a bit boring, the rules and so on. But there's, like I said, it's not just rules, and there's a meaning to them. Suppose that your house is on fire. Oh, we have a sudden new topic. Suppose that your house is on fire, right? And the first thing you're going to do when your house is on fire is you run out of your house, especially when it's like this. So people care most for their life and good health. But how about there is something very precious that you have? Maybe it's like a little thing that your parents gave you to keep, like a sort of keepsake or something, or a memento or something very valuable. Maybe it's what do you call it? Maybe it's a bracelet. Maybe it's anything that is very valuable. Maybe you also care a lot about your credit cards. So you run back into your house to get those things. There are things in life that we consider important that are our property, but we would think those things are very essential to our lives. So we run back into the house to get those things. Now, I've now presumed that you are living single. But if you have a family, then you better make sure that they are no longer in the house, right? Your partner and children, if you have them, you run back to get them. This is not in order of importance. This is not in order of importance. Well, I can come back to what order it is in, but it's not in order of importance, because not everybody has. By the way, not everybody has partner and children, so that's why it can't come as number one, because that's how the list is made. But of course, if you have a partner and children, that's the first thing you think about, because you don't see them standing anywhere on the street, so you immediately realize they're still in the house, so you run back to get your partner and children. But what if your partner has always been cheating on you? So there's also the principle of mutual sincerity. There's also the principle of mutual sincerity. These four things people care most for in life. But like you said, of course, if you have a partner and children, that comes number one for many people. That is the case. But if there's something going on, right? So all of these things, they go together. And therefore, the Buddha talks about four important ethical resolutions. They are the first four of the five Panchasila. So this is a plaque. At the background, you can see a plaque. This is a plaque. You can find it in Lumpini. And if anybody's interested in Lumpini, this is the birthplace of the Buddha in Nepal. And if you are interested, you can talk with B. She has a tour. When is it starting? February. Okay. I'm helping you to advertise. Okay. So if you want to know more about that, you have to ask her. So this is a plaque from Nepal. So it also talks about these Panchasila. So the four ethical resolutions are based on these four things that I just mentioned. So because of compassion, I don't take life. Everybody loves their life. Everybody wants to take care of their lives, right? Most people don't want to die. Most people, they want to be alive. So because of compassion, you don't take life. Because of right livelihood, you don't steal. You know, everybody loves their property. So you take good care of everybody's property, and you don't steal from others. These are all basic things, right? Very basic. Third thing, because of contentment, I don't engage in sexual misconduct. So when the Buddha is talking about this text, right, with the 6 directions, he starts out with basic ethics, very basic. Because this young man that I just mentioned, he is like he doesn't know anything about Buddhist teaching or about any teaching. He just knows that his father wants him to do this practice every day. So So this is like basic ethics, and it exists in every religion. That is true. And why does the Buddha mention this? Because this is also about the integrity of the family, right? So when you have a long-term relationship with somebody, you are not going to cheat. And if you know that somebody else is cheating, you're not going to work with that. This is the three principles, and the fourth principle, of course, is to not speak what is not true. These are sometimes known. These are like the first four of the five ethical resolutions. What is the fifth one then? Okay, here it gets interesting. You already know about this. Yeah, I understand. This is like review. So when the thing is that all of those things I just mentioned, most people agree with that, you know. There's hardly anybody who says, yeah, you really need to cheat with everybody in the world, or you really need to cheat everybody, or you really need to hurt anybody. Nobody believes in those things. But very often we can't really stick to our principles because of what? Because we lack mindfulness. We believe these principles are important, whether they are Buddhist or any other religion, but we cannot always stick to our ideals because there are things that we lack sometimes. Sometimes we lack mindfulness, and so we forget about our principles. So therefore, the Buddha also said, when it comes to the fifth principle, the fifth resolution, you shouldn't consume substances that lead to lack of mindfulness. That's why in Buddhism and in many other world religions, alcohol is considered problematic. This is always very difficult for me to teach because I live in Europe. In Europe, Europe, Netherlands not the worst. Could be worse. Could be living in Belgium or Germany where they have these big, the beers are almost as large as a wheel of a car. So this is not always easy for people in the West to learn about this, but it's very important because mindfulness is so important in Buddhism. We also consider that, alcohol is really not helping us in that process. But we have this, we have a bit of a blind spot, especially in Western culture, with regard to this topic. But the Buddha not only talks about alcohol, he talks about a lot of things that make us unmindful. And all those things that make our attention short and in suffering. And this he actually combines into a group of 6 things. He talks about alcohol, he talks about haunting the streets at unfitting times. This is a bit of an old expression, but it basically comes down to, it all comes down to having addictions in your life. And right, so all of these things, they have different forms in the present day. For example, gambling. A lot of people gamble online these days. There are many European countries that have prohibitions on online gambling because it's very addictive for many people. And all of these things become very addictive if we allow it to. Like, does Buddhism prohibit entertainment? No, it doesn't. The Buddha never said you can never enjoy any entertainment. But for monks, okay, we are very cautious. We do not get involved in entertainment. But for people in general, the Buddha did not prohibit entertainment. But the problem is that we have to always make sure that we not get too addicted to anything, that we don't get addicted. And this has only become worse in the present day. So therefore, we come to the topic of mindfulness and making sure that when you have the foundation of ethics, that you also take care of making sure that there's no addictions. For example, the mobile phone can also be an addiction for sometimes for people, because these things are designed for addiction. We all know that now. This knowledge is widely available, right? And many things that are addictive in the present day, for example, social media, they are often free because, as the saying goes, when the product is free, you are the product. So this is a bit of the problem of modern addiction. So the Buddha did talk about these things, but he didn't talk about mobile phones because there weren't any in his time. But so the addictions change, but the people are always the same. We let things outside of us determine our worth, and we flee from our own mind. So all of you have come here to meditate. That means you think it's very important to take care of your mind. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here for how many minutes? About 45 minutes just now. We meditated together. So you all have learned about the value of the human mind. So you will understand why I'm talking about this. So just to close off with, the Buddha, he did talk about, apart from making sure that you find that you're not addicted to anything and you take care of your ethics, the Buddha also said that every human relation, we must be careful not to be biased. Because all of the relations that the Buddha talks about that I just mentioned, right? The 6 directions, many of these relations, they have to do with how we treat other people. And often when we treat other people, and there's like a group, there's many people, bias can have a role. And bias can be in many ways. Sometimes some people we like, sometimes people we don't like, and sometimes we have certain judgments about people that we haven't really checked, whether that's really true or not. So this, the Buddha called this being biased because of greed, hatred, and delusion. So sometimes we like certain people, we dislike other people, and sometimes we have our judgments ready. We have our prejudice. So that's why these are sometimes called, in Thai language, we call these the boat. The boat is, well, how do I translate that? The boat is not straight. So they, instead of saying biased in Thai language, we'd say the boat is not straight. So when you're sitting in a boat, the boat is like listing. All right, thank you. So this is very important. So next evening, next week, I'm going to talk about the first relations and talk about more about the basics of this teaching. And you should keep in mind that whenever we deal with many people, there's going to be biases. So we cannot be free from bias completely unless you are already enlightened, like the Buddha. Or so that is not so easy to be free from bias. But we can make sure that our bias doesn't affect our actions too much. There's many words that people use for bias, but you can look at, for example, this list. This is from our deputy abbot in Thailand. He made this list. People tend to judge others by what? By appearance, by their sex, by their age, by their lineage. What are they coming from? What is their background? Their ethnicity, their friends and relations. We judge people by their friends sometimes. Education, sometimes we think somebody is reliable because of their high education, but that's not for sure. Profession, wealth, position. So this is all examples of bias and how it can affect our lives. So these things are just some basic things that are mentioned in this text. Now, if you are interested to read the text, the original text, I can send you a link. But it's a bit old language. You have to take that into account. But this is a text with a lot of wisdom in it. And when we come to the relations, it's quite interesting how the Buddha talked about taking care of everybody and in our society. There's a lot of responsibilities that we are born with. We are born as a son or a daughter. We are born and we quickly become a student of a teacher. And then when we grow up, we start to have other relationship and other responsibilities. Maybe we become somebody else's partner in life. And then later on, we start to have children. There's a lot to talk about here. And maybe some people say this is not really a topic for monks. Maybe some of those things are going to be mostly just sharing wisdom. But there are other things that we have in common, like monks also have friends, we also have teachers, we also have like brother, sister-like relations. So this is similar. Anyway, this is all I'd like to share with you today. I may be a bit theoretical today, but that's because my plane just landed yesterday, so I need to get a bit into it. So today there's also a meditation, full moon meditation, that will start after this. And we have a teacher from Thailand, Lumpi Jackie. He will do the Lumpi Jackie Sila Sangvalo. That's his monastic name, right? So he will be guiding the meditation, and that will be online. So they will put on the screen, and you can follow his guided meditation. And it's a special day today, because today is Asala Puja, which is in Buddhism is the day that the Buddha taught for the very first time. Like the first time he formally gave a teaching. He may have said hello to somebody before that. It's not like he never said anything, but it's the first time he really gave a formal teaching. And he talks about the basics of Buddhism, like the Four Noble Truths. There is truth, there is suffering in life, and there's a way to deal with it. And his first students that listened to him, we call them the five, they're often called the group of five, the five first students. One of those already became enlightened in the footsteps of the Buddha. So it was like the day when everything that the Buddha had discovered, he found that somebody else could also discover these things. So there was like a witness to everything that he had learned and the discoveries that he had made. And this is all happened on Asala Puja. But I think we're running out of time now, so I'll wrap it up. May you find wealth, health, and wisdom in your life. May all your good wishes be fulfilled. May you always find good relations in your life, whether they are the people that you've known for long or the people that you just got to know. May you always live in peace with your fellow human beings in every lifetime until awakening.